All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our panel on building a career in the music industry. We've got some awesome panelists here who are going to give you a lot of advice that they've learned themselves and learned from other people. We'll go ahead by introducing ourselves. My name is Mitra. I'm currently the president of Small Town Records here at Duke. If you don't know much about Small Town, don't worry, we'll talk a lot about that later. But yeah, let's let our panelists introduce themselves. We can start with Alexa.
Hi, I'm Alexa Bernstein. I'm a current junior at Duke, and I'm a Program 2 major, and I'm currently the Executive Vice President at Small Town Records and have a bit of experience in the industry. I spent last summer working for the Recording Industry Association of America at doing music policy work, and the summer before that working for an independent jazz label distributed through the Orchard called Blue Engine Records.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alexa. Next up, Ethan, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. How's it going, everybody? My name's Ethan Udell. I graduated from Duke just in May. So I was actually the president of Small Town this past year. And a bit about myself and my background. I've worked in quite a few different sides of the music business, but I've done some events work for Billboard, some A&R work for Republic Records, some marketing analytics type stuff for a company called M Theory, which has some Duke alums over there, and a management company called Crush Music. And then nowadays, since graduating, I run my own small boutique management firm called Ryder Management with actually a fellow small town peer of mine. We have 3 clients, do some consulting work, and then I also work at Arista Records, where I'm a product manager, or what some people would call a marketing coordinator over there.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ethan. And lastly, we have Serge.
Hey, y'all. My name is Serge. I'm a Duke 2017 grad, so I guess I'm the oldest on this call, which is kind of a trip. And served in Small Town before that as a president. I loved my time at Small Town. And then now I run a entertainment company called POPULUS Media Group. So.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah. And just so everybody knows, the format of this is basically going to be that I have some discussion points that I want to talk about with the panelists. So I'm going to bring those up and basically give them the chance to respond. If y'all in the audience have questions or specific things that you want to hear more about at any time, please just drop a little bit about it in the chat and we'll try to make time to incorporate those. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. And the first thing we really want to do is to introduce Small Town Records to y'all. As I mentioned before, Small Town is a student-run record label here at Duke. We're a part of DUU, and we typically have about 10 signed artists every year. We have a studio in the Bryan Center, which we use to help them record music. And we also have a full team of managers, marketers, booking reps, and more to help them really grow their music and to help give a lot of these people, experience in the music industry. I think Ethan can go ahead and kind of dive deeper into that.
Yeah, for sure. Small Town, and I'll let Serge tap in a bit too, because he was one of the instrumental figures who really helped structure STR to be kind of what it is, currently at Duke. But Small Town, I think, is a really great crash course on the music business. It's kind of like an all-in-one incorporation of the different sides of the industry. There's a lot of ways that you could get involved in the music business, and I'm sure that everything that I'll name here won't cover it at all. There's a lot of things you can get involved with, from marketing and management, and on the label side, there's everything from people that work and have relationships with streaming platforms and work on making sure that artists are best represented there. There's people that work on digital teams and run influencer campaigns and ads on different platforms, and there's people that do radio promo, and there's people that do press and PR, and there's a lot of different ways, just even in the record label system, that you could get involved in the music business, that I think Small Town tries to cover, and a little bit more, by also being kind of a music studio and a hub for creativity as well. So I think that's kind of it's a very general overview, but yeah, Serge, do you have anything that you want to add to that as well?
No, man, I think you covered it.
Awesome. Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, like I said, there's also, you could work in the music industry and not work for a record label or management company or studio, which is kind of the three sides of what small town covers nowadays. You could go work for a company that does music publishing and licensing work. You could work for, there's a million different ways that you can get involved, is what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. There's, I think, a lot more to the music industry than most people realize on the surface. And honestly, in the 4 years I spent with Small Town, I feel like every year I find out about some new aspect of music that I had no idea about that kind of connects with a lot of other fields. And I always find that really cool and want to share that with people. So yeah, now that we've talked a little bit about these different roles in the music industry, I want to kind of dive into how you can kind of get your start in the music industry, how you get your foot in the door, maybe land that first internship or job, and see if our panelists have any advice. If anyone wants to hop in here, go ahead.
I know I can definitely speak from the experience being a Duke student and looking for an internship in the industry. When I first started out, I kind of didn't really know where to look. I started by making the most of Demon resources. So I went to Demon Weekend that freshman year. I started connecting with alum in the industry. And the biggest advice that I have for that is definitely network. Utilize the resources that Duke has. We have a fantastic alumni kind of base in the industry, which has been really phenomenal to tap into. And there are a lot of alum who want to help, and they're actively saying, like, reach out to us. Like, we want to be there for you. And so that's been phenomenal to take advantage of. Honestly, it's as easy as looking on the Duke alumni site and then sending a cold email, but you connect with someone, you talk to them. Sometimes they refer you to people. You often try and ask that. And it starts this chain of contacts where there are people who I connected with my freshman year who I'm still in touch with, who continue to refer me to people to find new opportunities just to chat and learn about the industry.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
Alexa. Oh yeah, go ahead.
What I'll add to that is, I think what Alexa mentioned about tapping into the resources around you is super critical. And I think it's the daunting part about, like, how do I break into an industry, right? Is like, how do I position myself or represent myself if I don't have prior experience, right? And I think that's the beautiful thing about the situation that you guys are all in at Duke, is you have plenty of opportunities where you can kind of serve yourself on a silver platter of, hey, I'm being proactive about, trying to learn about this business or trying to participate in this business or this side of the business. And I can show that to you because here are the resources at Duke that I've been tapping into, or in the space around me that I've been utilizing. So my point here by saying that is your networking and your opportunities over time will only become easier as you kind of build relationships around you. But to start, you guys are really in a super privileged and fortunate position to have great resources like a record label that's super well funded and resourced at your school, and a great radio station at your school, and like spaces and things and opportunities like Demon to connect you with other people. So I think my suggestion would be take advantage of what's around you, and then use that as a catalyst to really just like give yourself forward momentum. Because everyone that I've ever talked to coming out of Duke, if I said, hey, I'm involved and I'm really active and I'm working hard with Duke student run record label, already you're like in a position where most other college kids that are trying to talk to people in the music business don't have that behind them. So yeah, that would be my suggestion. Take advantage of what's around you and use that to kind of position yourself really strongly as you take advantage of kind of some of this outreach opportunity that Alexa talked about.
Just piggybacking off of that, which, Alexa's point on the networking piece, Ethan's point on utilizing those resources. I think there's a third part, which is specifically in the creative industry. Now it makes so much sense for you to already be making work, like especially coming from that space. So I wouldn't hold back from creating and putting together projects yourself in whatever industry you're interested in. But specifically if you're in music, figure out how to be putting music out. Think about it, because think about how you would market it. Think about it if you were play a little bit of pretend for yourself, where you kind of take it a little bit seriously, put the site together, try to think of a marketing strategy and put that together. Because again, that's just another way to differentiate that. Definitely Small Town allows that ability. It's kind of baked into that experience to be able to do that. But even outside of that, definitely, if you're ever thinking about entering a creative industry, there's nothing that speaks stronger than finished products, because people in the industry know how hard it is to finish a product. So in your time now, when when there aren't 1,000 things happening, there might just only be 100 things happening at Duke, right? Think about how you can be actively working on projects, always keep a project going, always be thinking about how to get finished products.
Absolutely. That all sounds like really great advice. Thank you so much. So next up, I kind of want to go beyond just the networking for your first job and talk about kind of the relationships, the long-term relationships that you'll build, which help like guide your career and which help you get advice for the next steps for the rest of your life. Kind of that more mentor-mentee type of relationship. So do our panelists have any advice for how to build those, how to know who's the right fit for that, or anything else?
I'll let Serge dive in there. You unmuted first.
Oh, is that right? No, well, no, go ahead, Ethan. I'll.
All right, man. Yeah. So, I mean, what I was just gonna say is like, I think they come about super organically. I don't think it's like I need to find a mentor. I need someone to, because like, we chatted about this, and I think like it's a really it's more of a friendship that develops than anything else. But it's really important in your career to have people that are older than you and more experienced than you that you can reference as a resource, not only for things happening in your career, but also just for personal things in your life. It's a great tool to have and a great relationship to have. But I think in terms of identifying those people, it's really just like putting yourself out there, like do things that you're passionate about and be super vocal about it. There's going to be people around you that will pick up on that and see potential in you and provide you with opportunities, but you have to kind of take that step of saying, hey, I'm really interested in this and I want to learn from you, and making other people around you aware that you're open to always absorbing from what they're doing, and that you can be this sponge, but you're also, you're not just there to take, right? You're there to like, you want to learn and grow with this person. So just expressing yourself in that way, I think is really critical. And then just doing all the things that we already talked about, like, putting yourself out there and making sure that you're positioned correctly is critical. But, and then on the flip side of that, then there's this piece of how do you maintain a strong relationship with someone over time? And, that comes with certain things like keeping in touch regularly, making sure that you're doing things, and again, kind of serving yourself on a silver platter and providing updates to people of, hey, this is what I've been working on, or I learned this, or I made this body of music, or I worked on a film with this friend, or, whatever it might be. I started managing this artist. Like, it could literally be anything, but just keeping people that are invested in your work and your life updated and in tune with that is super important to maintaining those relationships.
Again, piggybacking off of Ethan, there's definitely that piece of maintaining the relationship. I want to talk a little bit about even finding, like, how do you find a mentor? How do you identify a mentor that you might be interested in? And first of all, I think, finding those opportunities for common interest. So what does a common interest mean? I mean, if you're interested in their industry, that's obviously a common interest. There's that piece. But then, in addition to that, it's also looking at, just like you're on this call, or if you're on other calls or other meetings, other events, things like that, definitely wanting to be in the spaces where those people likely are. So again, if you're interested in an industry specifically, you want to find those opportunities, those demon talks, things like that. 9 times out of 10, right, you're able to see that person's full name on the call, or if you're in person, you can get their information, look them up. They're happy 9 times out of 10 to just get a message from you that says, hey, I was on this, I heard your talk. I'm a Duke student, blah, blah, blah. Just those opportunities that immediately will resonate with them. And it's like, hey, can I grab some time? Can I grab 30 minutes on your calendar to kind of dig into this topic, or to get to know your story more? If you don't know exactly what you want to talk about, that your story is kind of like the insert, because people are always like to talk about themselves. But in that space, I would definitely look at those two things. Wanting to be in the spaces where those mentors are, that's a great way to find them. In addition to that, Just always being, always kind of being present and being able to loop back and make sure you're connecting.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. Like, I think again, it's like you never know who's going to be a mentor and who's going to, like, who those relationships are going to develop with. It could be friends, it could be colleagues, old bosses, whatever it is. But I mean, like even Exhibit A right here, Serge was the president of Small Town when I was a freshman, and I very much like utilized him as a resource and a friend throughout my Duke experience and my experience in the music business based on his experiences to help me grow and kind of guide myself along the way. And, we now have a great friendship and all of that because of it. And that's just the bonus side. But I think it's like, and it could be with anyone. I have similar relationships with people that I've worked for in the past, people that I've just been connected with that I maintain relationships with, but there's a lot of value there in doing that. And I think it'll open doors for you in the future too, that you obviously can't even foresee now. So.
And just kind of like speaking from experience and bouncing off of what you both have been saying, I feel like it's good to pursue any route in that regard. So you have all these contacts. Don't be afraid to reach out with a check-in email. I have holiday cards and I send them out every year, and they're with personalized messages asking them about things that we've talked about. I have big docs where I keep tabs on everyone and make sure that I'm up to date with everything that they've been up to. I thought this was a little tacky, but I started doing it and it's actually really paid off really well. I started doing those Google search alerts, and you put in people's names and then you see them in the news, and then you can shoot them a little email. Honestly, having those ways to maintain those personal connections, ask them how they're doing, ask them what developments they've been making, while then being able to fill them in with what you're doing. Eventually, it'll organically kind of even out to the point where you know who your mentors are. They're the ones who connect the most, where you're excited to reach out to them and they're excited to respond or reach back out to you.
Yeah. Can I add one quick thing? There's a
Of course.
tool. There's a tool that I recommend. It's an app. It's called Covey, Covve. It is an address book that has essentially a reminder set. If you want to keep track of somebody, it is an address book that will essentially, you can set it to every 2 weeks, every month, every year, every quarter. It allows you to keep track of people, and also tracks if you haven't talked to somebody in a while to loop back. The second thing it does, and this is the cooler part, is that it gives you news related to that person. So Alexa, I'm actually going to recommend that to you too. It's a great app to kind of keep track of people and keep in contact, because when you got a notification on there and you're like, I need to call this person, it's a little bit of an impetus to do that. So I recommend that if you want to keep kind of relationships, if that's a part of something that you want to add to your discipline, is maintaining those relationships. I do that.
Awesome. Those are all super helpful resources. So moving on, we've touched a little bit on, how large the music industry, how many different roles there kind of are in it. So I wanted to get some advice from our panel on how you figure out what you want to do in this huge space. How do you, take your interests and figure out how you might want to combine them with music or use them to pursue a career in music?
I mean, my advice would be try everything and anything that you're interested in and do it unapologetically, and don't be afraid to fail or not like something either, because that's just part of like the learning process. Like, I did events work for Billboard, and like it was really cool and it was really dope to work for Billboard, but I learned that like I never want to plan a festival again in my life. It's just not my thing, right? So I think but I would have never known that unless I had that experience. So I think I think that's what I would say. And I think like in terms of like figuring out what you want to do, just like diving in and doing a lot, or putting yourselves in roles or positions where you can tap into a lot of different things, finding those internship or job positions or even positions like at Duke, where you can kind of be a middleman to like a lot of different people and departments and experiences and things. It's kind of a critical thing for you to just be able to figure out for yourself what you like and don't like. But yeah, that's my big picture advice is try a lot of different things and then just narrow it down for yourself and always be willing to like learn and grow. Like I'm working in the music business now, but like I don't know where my career is going to take me, right? I just know what I'm doing right now and what I love to do and what I'm enjoying at the moment. And I think that's all that anyone can do for themselves, right? It's just like have experiences and then reflect on it and see what you really love and don't like about things.
I can definitely agree with that in terms of trying everything. At the same time, sometimes you don't know how things are going to end up. They don't go the way that you expected or planned. So I know for me, for COVID, I had my plans for the summer. They were going to be in essentially event work in a sense. And that was what I was really set on. And then what I was planning to do was canceled. So I had to turn around and look for new opportunities. And this opportunity with the RIAA came up and I took it, and it ended up turning into something really, really great and showed me that this policy side of music is something that I never had considered. And now it's something that I'm really interested in continuing to do. I'm continuing with that work now, which has been really, really interesting. With that in mind, just know that things might change and they might shift, and you just have to kind of go with it because you never know what doors may open when things don't go the way they planned.
All right. Serge, did you have anything to add to that, or are we good to move on?
No, definitely. There's a book, Everything You Need to know about the music business. It's not. I mean, it's a good overview, but that book is pretty good. I think it's Daniel Passman, David Passman.
David Passman. Yeah, I got it behind me somewhere over there. But yeah, get the Kindle version, whatever it is. Get whatever you need to. Just have it as a resource. That thing's like a music industry Bible. It's like if you, yeah, I'll let you speak on it because you recommended it to me initially, Serge.
No, it's good stuff. It just gives a good high level overview with some details about. You can even what I would do. You can even look at the chapters. You don't have to read every chapter. You can look at the chapters, and it gives you a pretty good breakdown of some of the different pieces that go into an artist's career. Also, some strategies and things like that too. So that's probably a pretty good book to just look at, skim, whatever you need to do to get a good idea.
Yeah.
Of the history.
I will say it's a really great summer read. You can go take it like outside. I mean, it's cold now, but it's definitely something that you can go like bring a book, bring a pencil, and just annotate as you read. You can do one chapter at a time. Yes, the name of the book is Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business, and I believe I thought it was Donald Passman, but I could be wrong. It's by Passman. Everyone that I know of referred to it as the Passman book. So.
Yeah, I could be wrong on the first name as well. It's definitely the Passman book. There's another great book that's similar by Ari Herstead, and I forget what the name of the book is, but it's another one of those, everything you need to know about the music business. And kind of, again, my recommendation would be, if you have the time and you want to sit down and go read through it, it's an awesome resource. But personally, how I've used it is just like I don't know what someone in licensing and music does. I'm gonna go read the 30 pages on that, and it's like kind of just an encyclopedia for that purpose.
There's actually a Duke alum banked in the acknowledgments. So if you can figure out who that is, like extra points to you.
All right, that was awesome. Thank you all. So we did kind of touch on this a little bit during that part, but I want to see if anybody has anything to add to it. I kind of wanted to talk about the challenges that people face working in the music industry and how they've overcome them and like worked through them.
I mean, challenge number one is like, I'm sure some of you have felt the pressure as well as like, it's really easy to see your friends around you, especially at Duke, right? Like locking down positions for internships or jobs or whatever super early. And quite frankly, that's just like not how the music world works. It's, things open and in 2 to 3 weeks, they need the position filled. There's not typically, there are certain roles in music that have more standard recruiting cycles, like some of the music agencies, although that might not be your best bet nowadays, considering there's not a lot of festivals happening at the moment, but or tours. But but yeah, I think I think it's really it can be daunting to look at your future and be like, I don't have anything locked in, or I don't have anything set. But I think just like putting your best foot forward all the time, and like we said, just like being active as best you can in whatever creative or entertainment related ways you're able to is super critical. When I finished up school in May in the middle of a pandemic, trying to get into the music industry, it was not exactly a conventional time to be doing so. But what I did, I was already working with some artists. I decided, I'm going to do this full time now. I launched my company officially. I started really putting all my time and energy into that after not being a student. And that, by being really vocal about that, about what I was working on and the consulting work I was doing and some of this other stuff, opportunities came about for me just that way. So I think the lesson there is like kind of what Serge was talking about earlier, which is just like, if you are a creative person, or even if you're not a creative person and you just are interested in getting involved in this industry, like there are things that you can do right now from your computer to get involved immediately. And by doing some of those things and showcasing yourself, especially in times when there's not exactly a lot of other things going on or formal opportunities for you, I think that shows a lot of initiative, and that speaks highly to work ethic for when those opportunities will come about for you.
Yeah. I think even around those challenges and sort of how we overcome them, I'm gonna take a little bit of a macro view, a little bit zoomed out, thinking about, I think it's challenging in general working in the creative business, or being in the creative business. And one of the hurdles to overcome is kind of that business side. I think looking from the outside, I think a lot of times music, film, which is kind of where I live in a lot, is it looks almost purely creative. It looks a little bit easier. It requires just kind of inspiration, just getting that thing. But I think there's a bit of this. I want to kind of popularize this idea that I think being in the creative business is actually pretty tough. And it's like any other, it's honestly like any other business. And I think if you kind of take that approach to it, while still being creative, but being intentional, being professional, having a really high sense of excellence, kind of the same way that you would approach even your studies, or I mean, maybe not all the time, but but even the way that you want to approach something, like your friends that are in banking, or friends that might go to banking or consulting, you're no less professional when thinking about the work you're doing in music. And I think if you take sort of that approach and the way that they prepare, the way that they think through it, I think it really moves you past that initial challenge. Because I think it's a little bit what I've seen, even when hiring some creative people, there's a little bit of a shock when you go behind the curtain on how art and how the creative business is made. There's a lot of just logistics. There's a lot of kind of just pure execution. There's a lot of strategy behind it. There's a lot of times people are thinking like a business, and it's important, I think, maybe to come in with that idea, because the magic then is creating amazing stuff. I'm creating amazing things with that infrastructure, with that still business in mind. I think that's something that maybe it can be a challenge. I see it as a challenge sometimes when people come in, that if you can think about that from the beginning, I think it'll put you way, way ahead. So just maintaining that professionalism.
I definitely want to echo what was already said and add that as a student and going through these processes and seeing things, it does happen fairly last minute. So these hiring processes, I was hired in May my freshman year, in April my sophomore year. So it's definitely not what you would traditionally see in those normal recruiting process kind of patterns, but it's still, as Serge said, just as rewarding, just as impactful, and just as professional. So
I just want to add on the flip side of that. I mean, like we were talking about some challenges, but I think like kind of, and just to double back to play off what Serge was saying, like I think it is really rewarding to also though like be a part of like a business and an infrastructure that produces like art and like these assets that have such like far-reaching impact that's really not tangible at all. It's like a really cool thing. So there's also like, despite and for me, like one of the challenges personally working in this business is like there's a lot of slow growth, right? Like you can have viral moments. You could post on TikTok and have an artist blow up or whatever it is, but there a lot of times it's really a slow, deliberate, focused, developed build that requires executed planning and long-term strategy. And to see that's a challenging thing in of itself, just to have like the wherewithal to stay in there against something that's really kind of unsure, right? So I think that's a challenge, but on the flip side of that, it becomes like a really fulfilling experience just to be involved with like the process in any way of the creation of arts, because there's a lot to show for it, and that's a special thing.
Absolutely. It's definitely a grind, but it's definitely very rewarding. And I think that brings us really nicely into our next topic, which is I kind of want to dive deeper into what those skills that are really useful in this industry are. Like what are some of the more technical or concrete things that people should be learning about if they want to be successful in this industry, and how can they maybe use them to stand out when they're applying for positions?
I mean, I always say just like that's going to vary per person just because everyone's got different strengths. But I think anything that you can tap into and figure out how you can like bring it into this industry and the space can be beneficial. Like if you're a stats person and you're really into like data and stats, like there's a whole world for comp sci and stats people in the music space and tech people. If you're really into like marketing and branding and that's your thing, like there's a whole space for you in that world. And if you have Photoshop and Final Cut skills and that sort of stuff, like you will always be marketable and be able to find freelance work or something to do for someone if you have those skill sets. Or if you're a musician and you learn how to, you pick up how to use like Logic or Pro Tools and you start learning how to mix and produce on your own. Like these are all things that like, skill sets that you might not think, oh, these are directly applicable to what I'm doing, but I can't tell you how many times that an artist or someone at the label sends me something that they need edited, and because I just don't have Photoshop experience, it becomes much more of a hassle for me. So I think any skill set that you can actively learn and pick up, and there's now since quarantine and all that, there's a ton of online resources that really make things readily available. But I think my big takeaway would just be like play into your strengths, but always be like super open to like learning new things and trying to tie that back into whatever you're doing.
I agree with that. I actually learned very, very recently that you can put so many experiences on your resume. I didn't realize that the programs that I had used at Small Town, Chartmetric, Sound Charts, those kinds of things can go on a resume. So I definitely recommend you all just compile all your skills and put them there. And that includes music analytics, that includes the Adobe suite, that includes even Microsoft 365. Like you can do that. I used Amazon Workspaces over the summer. That was like a new program, kind of navigating that. If you can code, there's a place for you in the industry somewhere. Like just take kind of those skills that you might have and you can channel them however, echoing what Ethan said.
And I think, in addition to that, you'll maintaining a sense of one, curiosity, I think is super important, especially even as you're in school now. So like, I mean, you're already naturally curious, you're already kind of going through it, but I would recommend you to continue to stay that way and kind of try to ask yourself, how did they do that? And if you're constantly asking that question, you'll find yourself picking up a lot of skills. I'll also go back to the making finished products. So if you're interested in the music industry, go through the steps of trying to launch anything. Go through the steps of making it. Go through the steps of, and if you don't know how to do it, like Google, figure out what tools they're using, and then just use it. And I think there's just that experience provides so many opportunities to learn, because now it's like, instead of just, because it's sometimes tough to pick up skills, but like if you're picking up skills in the context of a project that you're working on, you'll find yourself just like naturally scaling up way faster, right? Like, so if you're thinking about, hey, I need to learn like social media and like how do I do paid ads or something like that, or how do I even like build a brand on social media, whatever, creating a product, working with an artist, or you being the artist and kind of like trying to reverse engineer like a little project for yourself, that'll give you the skills. So I would say that like while learning the skills is important, I think learning the skills in context is probably like really, really important. And with that, like as everybody else has sort of echoed, it's partly because there's so many skills that come together in the music industry. And I think in all industries, but even music specifically, like there's so many skills that come together that kind of tasting and seeing is a really good way and an approach to kind of grow a broader skill set. And then, you know, you'll naturally gravitate towards the thing that you become really obsessed with, if that's data or if that's on the producing side. Like just, you know, I'm a huge proponent of putting projects together, trying to put them out, trying to push them, because you'll just learn, you'll grow so much faster that way.
All right, great. Thank you all so much. Before we move on to the next topic that we had set, I did get one question from the audience that I wanted to make sure we touched on. And it was that somebody wanted to know more about the steps of kind of publishing, recording, distributing a record.
I'll let Serge talk about the initial steps, which is the putting together of the music, because that's much more his forte than mine. So
Yeah. So like, yeah, the actually producing part of a record, um, I'm going to kind of use film terminology because it actually kind of works really well. There's like pre-production, then there's production, and then so in the pre-production stage, essentially what you're doing is it's getting the songs together. So if you're releasing one song, that's just that one song, and getting that and kind of work. It's oftentimes called a demo, but like the idea is that you kind of want to get that song to a place where you can play it on a guitar, play it on whatever, and kind of getting a feel for it. I mean, if it's more hip hop music or whatever, that might just be, you know, you might skip a little bit. That's just writing actually what you're doing. So there's that initial pre-production, and pre-production is basically what do we need in place? Well, first you need that song. If you need art, if you need talent, producers, if you need those kind of people to make, whether it's make beats or play instruments, kind of assembling the team is in pre-production. Then once you have that, you kind of go into production, which production in that space is, okay, we have the songs we want to make. Now we need to schedule the time in the studio to actually put them down to record them, right? So when you're in production, essentially what you're doing is actually tracking everything, trying to get the best performance from the artist and bringing in the people that you kind of assembled in pre-production. So once you have all those songs recorded, you need a mix. So a mix is basically, hey, when you record, if you ever hear yourself recorded on your phone, it just doesn't sound like a record yet, right? So a mix is basically the process of going through and balancing everything out, making sure that the guitar and the vocal sits really well together, those kinds of things. And then after you do a mix, there's a step called mastering. So this is all in post-production. Mixing and mastering is in post-production. And then in mixing, basically what it is, it's the process of basically making that song that sounds really, really, really good on your system because you've sat there and mixed it, or your mixer's system, if you hire somebody or bring someone in. Mastering is a process of one, raising that level because is increasing that level, but then also making it so that it kind of sounds good on almost any platform. So if I'm listening to it on car speakers, it sounds just as good on my car speakers as it might be on some headphones. So there's some things that they got to do with that. But now that you have a mastered track, you are now in Ethan's world where you have that beautiful mastered track. Ethan, take it away.
yeah, I mean, the first thing I'll say is like, it's really easy to put out a product once you have it, right? Like if you want to, like it's as simple as like you can make a SoundCloud account and put it on YouTube, and like that's easy. If you want to put music out on all platforms, there's companies called distributors, and that you could easily sign up for. Some are as cheap as, $30 a year or $10 an upload, or they take 10% of your music. Like there's different platforms with different deals, but there's platforms like DistroKid and CD Baby and TuneCore and United Masters and Symphonic and 1RPM. There's a million of them. But my point is it's super easy to find platforms that will allow you to put your music out there to the world. All you need is, the product ready to go and artwork, and make sure you're not doing anything illegal, like taking someone else's music or samples or whatever it is that you're not supposed to. But yeah, that's the easy part. That then comes the piece of like, how do I make sure that people actually consume my product, right? How do I make sure that the art that I've made is something that people actually see? And that's a very complicated thing, and there's a lot of ways to go about it. And I think every artist has their own way of doing so. But that could be, hey, I'm gonna reach out to a bunch of curators for Spotify playlists, or that run YouTube pages, or these people are huge TikTokers and I want them to use my sound that I put up on the platform, or these are the Instagram and Twitter pages that can repost and share my content, or these are some Reddit threads I could tap into, or I just made a Snapchat filter with my song and my face on it, and now I'm getting all my friends to use that. So there's a million different ways that you can go and put your stuff out to the world. I think the hard part is just you're competing for viral attention, right? That's what everyone's doing. You want to be the thing that you want to be the next big thing that goes off, whether that be, a song or a movie or a TikTok video, or, this really dope picture you took, if you're a photographer, like whatever it is, whatever your art is, you want that viral moment. That's the ultimate goal, right? And then to capitalize off of that. And I think to do so, it's really just like, again, it kind of goes back to that same message of like, just put in as much effort as you can and tap into every potential network that you can, like try everything. Don't be afraid of things not to work. Like all of those same messages apply to like the promo world for art. It's like be super planned and deliberate and say, these are our goals and our objectives, and these are our targets. These are the people that we think make sense for this project. And like, you got to be realistic about it and super organized and well planned. But at the end of the day, it's also like, that one email that you didn't send could be the one opportunity that, is the YouTube page that reposts your song, and now it has 500,000 views instead of like 30 views, right? So you never know what that outlet's going to be. And I think like just putting in a lot of time and energy and doing like organized, deliberate outreach and promotion is like really kind of critical on the marketing and promo side for art. Yeah.
Awesome, great. And I think we have a follow-up question about this, kind of asking about the timeline for going from pre-production to mastering. And I think this might be a little bit hard to answer because it's going to depend a lot on kind of how ambitious the project is, how much time you have to put into it personally, how many people you're dealing with for your producing part. But maybe somebody else can give like a more accurate answer than me.
No, definitely. I think exactly. It definitely depends. But there's, part of it is also what you're starting with. I mean, if you're starting with no songs whatsoever, pre-production might be a year, of just getting the songs together until they feel right. But yeah, absolutely. I would say generally now, in general though, I think things are just happening a lot faster. So I would definitely say like the clip at which people, and there's different philosophies on this too, as far as whether do you want a ton of content kind of just constantly going and building that catalog quickly, or are you more of like, hey, I want to spend a year working on this album to release it? So there's different philosophies around that, and obviously different ways of approaching it. But I would say that in general, right now for a lot of people, I mean, your music is being made super fast. And part of the way that you do that really fast is to, you can record your vocals, but then you can also have like, so once you have that demo down, you can essentially send that off to all the people that need to add their little part, whether it's a beat maker here, a background vocalist here. Basically, you outsource all that stuff because we're remote. So everybody gets a piece of it. They can add their piece to it, and then you just kind of compile it, and that makes it go a lot faster, right? That's working in series versus it's working in parallel versus in series, and that makes it go way faster. So I mean, you can literally release a song in a weekend or in a day, and get it out there. There's some tools that'll master songs for you super fast. So definitely depends, but I wanted to provide that a little bit of that caveat just because there's different strategies to getting there faster than what I described.
Yeah.
And I just want to
absolutely.
add as like a fun anecdote too, like kind of like what Sarah just said, like if you want to like put out, if you want to write, if you have a song that's ready to go and you want to put it out like tomorrow or in 2 days or 3 days, like you can very much do that. And like perfect example, and this happens all the time in music, but like happened to a friend of mine last week, like a friend of mine who's a manager posts a TikTok video, it goes viral, it has his client in it, video does 3 and change million views, the song starts popping off. They had a whole music video and a whole nother song that was supposed to come out 6 days later, and instead totally pivoted the plan. They got all their engineering and producer friends working on this track. They finished the track in like 2 days, and then they got a distribution partner on board through, you know, again, tapping into friends and getting people really excited about it. They utilized their successes. They played off the fact that they had a viral moment, and they were leveraging that to get people excited. And they got this track that, you know, was just a demo snippet from a video taken a year ago, posted on TikTok, and they have a product that is now up on all platforms. It came out 4 or 5 days ago, and it's done like 250,000 streams in a week. And part of that was like, part of that success is like playing off of a moment and getting things done quickly and capitalizing on an opportunity and taking advantage of it at a perfect time. So to answer that question, it's like, yeah, like a lot of artists have processes and things take time, but it's also like when things need to get done, like it very much can get done quickly if need be.
That means as an artist, to prepare for that, if you're an artist, and this, you should always be making content. You should continuously, and not as an obligation, but like that way when you come to, whether it's making one project or one big project that you want to put together, or if it's just releasing a track, you should kind of always be in a state of creating to keep that momentum going. That way it's pulling together things that are already there, as opposed to every time you're up at bat, you know, having to come out of thin air. So that means like if you're an artist, you should be like recording things as they come. If you have an idea, put it in a voice memo. Be like, if you have a cool lyric idea, just put that in a note. And then the beauty of that is that when you come into a session, you're never coming with nothing. You always have something that you're kind of working out. And most artists sort of are always doing that, but I would encourage that even more if you're not capturing it. As an artist, always capture your inspiration somewhere.
The one thing I'll say too, though, is also like, as an artist and working with artists, it's like, it's really hard to like come to a final product where you're like really happy and like, this is the final thing and I'm finally done putting energy into this. But like, I think like encouraging yourself to share your work, if you are an artist of any kind, is like a super critical thing. I mean, you look at artists that have blown up like recently, like look at like great examples like 347 Aiden, right? With that song Dancing in My Room, which was like a demo posted on TikTok, right? And like then seeing the reaction of people to those demos encourages you to, you know, finish your work and put it out. Like I think those are the perfect examples of like, just share your work, create all the time, and like something will happen if you just keep like putting your content in front of people, you know?
All right, great answers. I hope that helps answer your question. We are running a little low on time, so if you do have questions, please send those as soon as you can, just so I know how best to manage the rest of this panel. But for now, we'll move on to the next topic, which is I kind of wanted to talk about some of the trends that y'all see in the industry, you know, things that are changing, the big disruptions that have happened recently.
I mean, I'm just going to reiterate what I just said, which is like TikTok. Like I work at a label now, like labels are signing stuff that has like data supported, like organic growth behind it. So it's like TikTok, SoundCloud, YouTube, like those platforms where like you could share content and really like get the algorithms turning behind you and putting it in front of a lot of people super easily. Like if you're a creator, that's kind of what you need to be taking advantage of, because that's just nowadays it's like the music industry used to be like the record labels had a lot more say as to like what content people actually saw, right? Because they were almost like a gatekeeper or a dictator to like literally physical music getting into stores for people to purchase. But nowadays, since you can go and share your music anywhere, I think that's the biggest trend. It's like finally things are blowing up because the data is saying people want to hear this, and that means the industry is listening to it. So I think that's kind of the trend I'm seeing. Everything is like super data driven. Everyone is really listening with their their eyes and not their ears necessarily, and just watching what the market is saying in terms of like popular content.
Absolutely. And I think in line with that is another trend, which because like if you're trying to make data informed decisions, part of what you're also looking at is how many times at bat are you, right? So like think statistically, a lot of what what I'm seeing is which in the creative content, it was not an accident that Netflix is releasing a movie every week. Like there's this new play where it's like a lot of what people are looking for is how many times at bat can I go with creative content? Because I think one of the big secrets, and it's not that big of a secret, nobody knows what's going to be hot. Like nobody knows it until it's hot, and then you're like, oh, that was hot. That did it. So with that strategy in mind, what a lot of people are doing is kind of just creating and letting the market, kind of letting that churn, letting that content go out there. And what that probably means, I think, for artists is it's not saying that you're releasing lower quality, but you do need to be operating at a pretty good clip. You do need to be releasing content consistently enough that we have the data to see the response from that content. If you're never releasing content, we don't have any data to actually determine whether it's doing well or not. So now the strategy is, okay, cool. How do we release content weekly, monthly? Like, how do we release content more consistently to have more times at bat so that we can learn more from those times at bat, and then ultimately like optimize and continue to optimize the process. So in line with that sort of TikTok and data movement, there's this also providing ourselves enough data by creating more and maybe being a little bit having more of like a bias towards action and a bias towards release, as opposed to kind of hoarding all that content and waiting for the perfect time, perfect moment. Doesn't exist. Release it, learn from it, move on, and continue to keep doing it.
Yeah. In terms of trends, I always ask people and things that I've seen. And a couple of things come to mind from what Phil mentioned. TikTok definitely is a huge thing that's growing right now. It reminds me a lot of what I've often been told, which is that in labels, which labels aren't the gatekeepers anymore, but labels still have all these artists. It's like there are 20 artists hypothetically, and of that, one makes it huge to make it like pretty well. They're well-known names, and then that's 3 of them. So the other 17 don't necessarily get the traction that you would think. And so it's kind of the whole idea where they say there's however thousands and thousands of songs that are released every day. So you want to kind of break through because it's so much more accessible now that the labels aren't necessarily the gatekeepers. Anyone can release anything. You can upload to SoundCloud, upload to Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere. So it's a matter of how can you kind of break through and gain that traction from there. There was something else, but I can't remember at the moment.
All right, great. We got 2 more questions, so maybe we can answer those real quick and then finish up. The first is asking for advice on how to stay up to date on the industry, what resources, newsletters, stuff like that are you following? And the second is advice on the differences between working for like a large company versus a small company versus even independently in the industry.
I mean, me personally, couple great resources are Music Business Worldwide, great website for music news, job opportunities, all that stuff. They do a great email blast. I think it's daily, honestly, or if not more than once a day, but really great tool. There's another great email blast called the Digilog, which I've noticed has been particularly good for job and internship opportunities. So I would tap into that. Other than that, there's some really good podcasts. There's like just on the music business. So tapping into all of that stuff, I just try to listen to, my peers in the industry speak as often as possible. I think you could learn a lot from that. Also Clubhouse, the app, is a great way to like hear people speak, although you have to be a little bit skeptical as to what you're taking as fact on there from other people. But yeah, just a great tool to like listen to peers. And just in terms of me personally, like working, between on the major label side and working in my own little independent music company, I operationally, like a lot of the things that I do and the strategies that I implement are the same. It's really just like you're operating at a different level of resources. Like when you're operating in a major label environment, you get to play around a little more, right? Because you have a little more money to work with. You have people working for you doing specific roles that are very very focused. So everyone's got a job to do. Whereas like when it's me working with my independent artists, it's me and my artists, and we're all doing everything all the time. And that's also an equally rewarding and fun experience. I think it's just, you're kind of bootstrapping a little bit more, right? So yeah, I think it's really just like being able to be innovative and learn how to play ball with like varying levels of resources has been and my big takeaway from working on like both sides of that.
Yeah. As far as resources, there's this really cool newsletter podcast now, sort of, Water and Music. This is more for if you're interested in like the intersection of technology and music. This really dope, like Ryder, her name is Sherry Hugh. She kind of researches some of the emerging trends in music. And so if you're a little bit more on the tech side, and seeing how that comes together with music, and also she thinks through it a little bit as even like kind of entrepreneurship and like a little bit of like investing side. That's a really good resource. Water and Music by Sherry Hugh. And then independent, I mean, I can talk about that a little bit on the kind of on the film side. And working independent creative, I think is really sad. It's actually pretty satisfying, from the standpoint of, you get, I mean, you get to play. I mean, literally your job is to come in and play. But it's also, I think it raises the bar a little bit as far as what the number of skills you kind of need to pick up. I think you're thinking a lot. You have to think a lot broader. So I would say, like, coming from a big organization in general, it's kind of like what if I were to contrast them, the way to think about it is, in a big organization, you might go fairly deep in one area, right? So you might be thinking about one specific even piece of marketing, maybe not even all of marketing, but like a specific vertical or piece of marketing fairly deeply, and then doing that and executing and growing that. So that specialization. As you get more and more independent, you start to realize that you have to fill more of those other specializations, whether it's yourself with a smaller team. So that means that the skills that you need to bring and develop and kind of master broaden a little bit, right? So you may be doing all the marketing, you may be doing all the strategy, right? You may be doing all the PR in addition to that. So it does broaden, but it's also, if you find yourself as somebody who likes getting a little piece of everything and kind of just figuring out the thing, you might like independent a little bit more. But if you find yourself as somebody who kind of wants a clear directive and I want to do my thing and do it really well, that's probably fits well within a larger organization.
And I'll just add, I have a more classical music background, and so I also on top of commercial music industry, I also like following like arts organizations as a whole, and so I like Arts Journal for that regard.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. I think that's the end of our time, so we're going to wrap up here. Thank you both to our panelists for coming here and giving us all this great advice, and to our audience for attending and asking some really great questions. If y'all want to view this again or double check anything from it, it will be on the Demon website. In a few days, it'll probably be uploaded, so you can check it out there. And yeah, other than that, thank you so much, and have a great night, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone. Bye now.
Good job.
All right. Bye.